Welcome back, everyone. We are live. This is another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers on YouTube. We are also a podcast on the Cheap Home Grow Podcast Network. Thank you all for joining us. And I'm joined by a panel of growers and awesome people tonight. I want to kick it off. And once I see the YouTube officially, I'm going to mute it so I don't get any playback in my headphones over here. But the first person I'll introduce is Aaron the Grower. Long time no see, bud. How you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. I've been laying low. I'm ATG Acres. I'm not on Instagram right now because I don't know, just fuck Instagram, really. But I'm having a good time focusing on the farm and focusing on my family. And harvest is upon us, so I figured I'd sit down. And I missed you guys so much that I wanted to come shoot the shit. So nice to see everybody.
We're more than happy to have you back, buddy. And
We missed you too.
we definitely missed you. And
Thanks, Thao. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate
happy
it, guys.
without even being on Instagram that you can grace our presence on the YouTube. So
Absolutely. I just have a quick question, Aaron. Is your account just deactivated at the moment?
It's temporarily disabled.
You have such sweet, cool educational content. I just wouldn't want it to go to waste, you know.
Here's the thing. The people in my county are there's task force being created with federal money, and they're doing things that are illegal. So I've done everything I can to mitigate my risk to be put under this like crazy anvil that they're dropping on my county.
Makes perfect sense to me.
So withdrawing from Instagram was part of that. Also part of that was, this is sort of my homage, my own personal way to pay tribute to Rob, was to just sort of withdraw and focus on what's important to me, because that's something him and I kind of discussed personally. So that was all part of it. And yeah, and I did a little bit of focusing on Zen Buddhism, but I won't bore you with the details of that, but that was a lot of fun as well. And so the whole Instagram thing, I'll be back. I've been making a lot of big moves. Like I'm working on the website. I'm working on some swag and some products and stuff to sell. And I'm going to drop all that at the same time. So Instagram, I'll be back on Instagram when the website drops. When I have a reason to be back on Instagram, I'll be back. Right now, it's just toxic. So
I think that's totally valid.
whenever you're ready to come back, I'm sure our community will at least welcome you with open arms, because I know a lot of people here really enjoyed following you. But with that said, next up, Matthew Gates. You can introduce yourself.
Yeah, sorry about interrupting that intro, but I'm Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I was recently on the Future Cannabis Project on YouTube, which is really cool, and I really enjoy. I've been on before talking about cannabis aphid and other sorts of 5 p.m. things, banker plants, and so if you want to see some of that information, you can find me on YouTube, Zenthanol, as well as on Instagram and Twitter at SyncAngel.
Good stuff. I definitely look forward to catching the playback on that. I missed the live, but I want to remind everybody here in the live to hit that live chat button over in the corner or top, wherever you're at, on the phone or on your computer, whatever it is. Make sure you can see all the messages if you want to be able to not have the random messages filtered out based on whatever YouTube selects to remove. Next up, we got Spartan Grown. Learning his new mute button.
Reason space button's not working for me now either. What's up, everybody? I'm Spartan Grown. Happy to be here. You'll see me on Instagram under Spartan Grown, all one word. Or you can find me at work at Mj Coco. On YouTube, you can find me right here with the Growing with My Fellow Growers, or at the Michigan Bros Grow Show, or at the GML Show. That's pretty much all my places, and a few random other places. Super stoked and excited to see Aaron here today. Been missing you, buddy, so it's cool to see you, dude. And just ready to get into it.
Happy to have him back as well. And it's funny that those are just the 3 shows you're most regularly on, because I see you over in the UK, see you over on Eagle shows sometimes. It's a little bit of everywhere. So always happy to have you here. Next up, Brandon Russ. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Everything is going super good over here on my end. If you're not, if you're not familiar with me, my name is Brandon Russ. You can find my Instagram account. You might be able to find it. It's shadow banned, but it's at Rust Brandon, all one word. And I'm a owner of Bokashi Earthworks, and my website is up, and there's bundle packs on there. There's all kinds of micro products. So yeah, if you're looking to, it's all under development too. We're going to be doing some new stuff, getting some education up on there. We're going to be doing some video production stuff. There's a lot of stuff in the works.
I'm always looking forward to your next move because the last several have impressed me very much, and I'm a fan of your products now, officially using the Bokashi and Micro Plus, and looking forward to using the Amino N Plus as well, some of my veg plants. So definitely a fan of your stuff and what I've seen it do in other people's gardens, and more recently mine. So shout out to you and your company and doing big things over there in Oklahoma. Thank you for joining us, Brandon. Next up, we have Dr. Mj Coco.
Hey guys, yeah, Dr. Mj Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I want to invite everybody to sign up for the New Year's Grow Challenge, where signups are going well so far. We have a cool group menu based on the strains we'll be growing. Everybody's going to drop seeds or cut clones on January 1st. We're doing a 1 cola challenge, which is going to be fun. Like, you can't top a plant and you have to trim all the lateral branches off. I think that's going to be fun. And we got cool prizes from Photon Tech, Mars Hydro, AC Infinity, and other people. So it's free. Everybody's welcome. Sign up, cocoforcannabis.com/challenge. And I look forward to the show today, guys.
Always happy to have you as well, and I look forward to that single cola, just beefy ass. Whoever wins that, it's going to have some impressive shit coming out of there, because I've seen some pretty cool single cola plants, and it's more impressive than a lot of people might consider it. So cool stuff. Definitely look forward to those challenges. Doc, thank you for joining us. Kyle, Predicated Breeding, how you doing?
Hey everybody, my name is Kyle. I'm doing all right. I'm glad everybody's here. If anybody's looking for feminized seeds, please feel free to check out my website at the letter P followed by breeding.com, pbreeding.com. And if you're looking at, I haven't posted in a little bit because I don't know, I've been kind of like, I think I'm shadow banned too or something. But if you want to look at any of my social media, you can find me at Predicated Breeding on all social media platforms. And yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thanks for hosting, Dad.
Always happy to host, and more than happy to have you here as well. And hopefully you get to jump in some tonight. I know we don't have Noah the Grower yet, but we also do have, he's not showing on the YouTube, but you can hear him in the background, and you could see him last night on Eagle Show, the American one.
Hello, Jack panel. Welcome back, Aaron. Yeah, I'm kind of multitasking over here. Shout out to Shane, and shout out to chat. I'm the American one on YouTube, and the American one _ with _ Keens on IG if you want to check me out. And yeah, what are we talking about tonight? Because if we don't have anything in particular, I noticed Russ Brandon's IG reel post, whatever, little clip on how the importance of pH in your water, even in living soil. So I've been not pHing my water. I mean, I did it 3 or 4 times to check my tap that I was using, and it was 7 basically every time, or so close that I could call it 7. But yeah, what do you guys think of that?
I was going to ask Brandon, I liked the video and bringing up the discussion, but one thing I didn't hear in the video is what you thought the ideal ranges were, or is there an ideal range for living soil in your opinion? What would you say?
So it's a complicated situation, and what I'm referring to is mostly people who are just watering without without knowing a good quality of the quality of their water, and also the pH definitely matters. I run RO, so it's very clean, and it usually runs about 6.3 to 6.5. It doesn't fluctuate. And that's where I have always seen the best results. This is a reason why I run those. However, let's say this is where it kind of gets tricky, right? So if you have city water and your water's coming out at 7.5, right? There's probably a reason why it's 7.5. It's probably because there's something in that water. And usually the problem is going to be what's in that water slowly over time stacks and can cause imbalances, antagonistic relationships in soil. But also, if you're adding something that has too high of a pH, and you're adding something like, let's say, Agsil, right? And you're feeding that in, which is going to bring your pH up anyway. It's going to bring the pH level way too high, so you have to have the ability for your soil to buffer any of those high changes, but constant fluctuations or constant like high or low pH will affect the type of microorganisms that grow in soil in those types of conditions, because we're talking about like I'm specifically talking about like indoor organics, right? Where we're like using these modified growing mixes, and we're basically creating like little bio reactors and little environments for microbes to make these things work. And so having that pH balance every time you water, it's going to fluctuate that system. Those fluctuations are going to be caused by what's in the water as well as the pH. It's also going to kind of change the availability of how things fall into solution. So one of the things is, if I took water that had really low pH and I did a saturated paste test using that water, the nutrient availability could possibly be different, right, than if you had a different range, because things fall into a solution at different pHs. So that is one of the reasons why I liked that kind of 6.3 is for me, like, where it's always been for me for organics. Whenever I ran salts, I was running like 5.8 though.
I wanted to say that the Michigan Made mix, which is a popular, I'd say like pre-amended super soil or modified growing mix, whatever you want to refer to it as, it's a peat-based blend. But their recommendation is a 6.5 pH, I believe. And most of my RO comes between like 6.3 and 6.7, depending on where I'm sourcing it or making it from. But yeah, I think that those ranges are really solid for soil. I'm curious what, maybe Dr. MJ, what do you think about the differences in ranges of pH between a modified growing mix or a soil like organic medium, and going over to the hydroponic side? Why I often hear that it's a lower, like Brandon just mentioned, and I think that may be correct, but I was curious if you have thoughts on the differences.
Yeah, it was actually interesting to hear Brandon's thoughts about the pH and its interaction with sort of microbe communities. That's an angle on sort of irrigation in organic gardening that I hadn't considered and doesn't really apply to us in soilless. So our pH is important, and yeah, it is a little bit lower, although 5.8 is great sort of blend of availabilities at 5.8. It's a little bit low in cocoa just because of calcium, but I certainly get down there and I wander up to about where you guys are in soil too, at like 6.3. And we're really sort of trying to feed the plant directly with those pHs. So pH is sensitive in a hydroponic grow because it affects nutrient solubility or nutrient uptake. So it was interesting just to think about the microbial angle on pH in an organic grow.
Yeah.
I've heard people that use Jacks, they use like a 3-2-1 formula sometimes, and they don't actually change the nutrient element ratio, NER, I believe, but they do change the pH. So like in flower, maybe they raise their pH, but in veg, it's a little lower. I could be misremembering that. I heard Sequence and Red Setter Farms talk about this a little bit, but I haven't personally used that particular nutrient mix.
Yeah, I haven't either. I'm not familiar with that.
But would that be something that would, just kind of thinking about what's available in the different pH ranges, is that something that you think could be effective?
Yeah.
Because I see a few people seem to prefer that methodology for some reason or another.
I mean, the big thing that changes really with the flowering nutrient element ratio is a big increase in phosphorus and potassium. In cocoa, what's really important is the big increase in phosphorus. I don't think you're going to be able to do that with one nutrient blend just by manipulating pH. I mean, you may be able to get more plant available phosphorus by changing the pH in the flowering period. But I mean, what we're really doing when we change the newts is increasing the dose of phosphorus and potassium.
Yeah, that's why there's like the veg A and B for a lot, and then like a bloom or flower A and B or whatever the mixes are. I think oftentimes the NER is
Yeah.
just so different that it makes sense to actually have a different ratio. And that's why I should have probably not brought it up, because I don't know if they were using other supplemental bottles or things like that as well as the Jacks, or if maybe there was I know that Jacks has separate bags, so I do think that they initially set up to do like flower, and they also have like CalMag and other things. So really just look into whatever nutrient system that you're using in regards to pH uptake.
Yep.
But supposedly,
and they should give you some guidance on it.
Spartan
Yes.
grown.
I was just going to say, we have to be careful because halfway through that conversation, well, just recently we switched to synthetic. We're talking synthetic, and it's a whole different game that way. When you're talking like what Dr. Coco was saying, that's true in synthetic. You're adding the bottles, you're adding nutrition, but organic, you're really not. When you're adding.
He's talking about Jacks as a fertigation, I assumed, right? Jack?
Say what?
Yeah. I was, but
It's a synthetic situation.
when I brought Doc into the fold, I was kind of curious for that exact reason, to kind of, because I know he comes from a scientific perspective with a lot of that knowledge, and so does Brandon as well on the organic side. So I was curious why each one of them had their opinions on which range they use for pH. But I think
that's kind of what I was getting at is that in organics, the range is kind of mitigated by the microbes. They kind of make some micro adjustments around themselves to get the pH need, whereas you don't really have that in a synthetic situation. So it's more important that you get that pH right in that situation.
Well,
I guess that's what I'm trying to get out to the audience, because there's a huge difference. The common misconception is that they're the same, and that they're
I think I covered that, Spartan. So I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, but yeah, I tried to explain that the reason we would want to adjust pH is that it is lower range, and that the reason we would want to adjust it is because we're trying to feed the plants directly, and we're setting the pH for nutrient uptake and solubility in the solution, which is different.
I missed that.
To hear that Brandon had brought in the dimension of microbes for an organic grow, and sort of keeping the microbes happy at different pH ranges.
One thing,
I think we did cover that. So
but supposedly it is true that in different pHs, different nutrients are more available to the plant, right? In general,
that's just like scientifically observable, depending on the medium and depending on the plant and things like that. But I lost my train of thought.
It will depend on the pathway that the nutrient is taking for uptake. So if it's being processed by a microbe, then the solubility in the compound may be different. When we're feeding the plant sort of dissolved nutrient salts, then we need to keep the pH in a certain range to ensure the solubility and the plant availability directly. So there are those distinctions.
So one thing I wanted to bring up was a lot of people, and I think this is why Brandon brought up the video, is many people I've heard in organic say that pH doesn't matter because your microbes can adjust it, or the soil will adjust it, the lime or whatever, it's buffered, this and that. And one of the things I heard Smiley's Garden and others talk about is it may be okay. Your plant may be able to take a 9 pH and buffer it down to that 6.2 or 6.3, but that's taking energy and time away from those microbes that they would be otherwise breaking down things and making them available. Trying to buffer that water into an appropriate solution is the way that I look at it. So you're taking more energy. Brandon was talking about redox in his video. I think that the pH at that high of a range can mess with the redox. I heard people like, there's a breeder who's recently kind of fallen from fame, but he used to recommend, he's like, oh yeah, just water at 9 pH every time. And I'm like, yeah, well, your plants may be able to do that. It's just like you're making it more difficult on them than if you would have just pH down to 6.5, which the soil you grow in recommended, and you might have a lot more success because you're just allowing the plant to do what it wants to do, as opposed to the soil is now working really hard to bring that water into the proper range.
So one of the mechanisms that's really similar in this aspect is when I'm talking about what falls into solution is the basic chemical constituents of what is available to a plant directly as it comes in contact with the root, the way hydroponics do, those same mechanics apply in these systems, right? But the way that they're acquired, those mechanics are different, right? The beforehand is different because they have to release it from the soil. So essentially, if you have a community of microorganisms that are releasing, like, let's say, cytiophores and phosphorus reductase, right, where they're reducing phosphorus from mineral inputs, and they're also creating compounds that are making iron more available. You want to be able to sustain these communities for a longer period of time. That way, when you do water, those things become available in the solution. And then one of the things is, a lot of those populations, they'll be diebacks, right? And they'll have to regrow. It's one of the reasons why we do the probiotic inoculation every week. So that way that nutrient cycling doesn't stop happening. And what I'm seeing is that the solubility of the minerals that are already in there become greater over a longer period of time with the continuous use and inoculation of the biologicals. So it's really similar the way that, like the plant will utilize it. Like they'll have the direct relationships, where there are nutrient exchanges between the microorganisms and the plant. But again, when we're watering the plant, it works almost the same exact way. I mean, it is. It's the same mechanics are happening that you would be watering in a cocoa system, right? It's just that those things are falling into solution from the soil as opposed to from the water that you're giving it.
So I had a question because in the video I recalled you talking about the water is a pH and then the soil is a certain pH. And granted, the soil is a certain volume of the pot and the water only takes up so much volume of the pot once it's saturated. Is there like a point where it's like, how oil kind of sits on top of water and they don't combine? At some point, they're actually going to interblend, and like how much of the water pH is impacting the soil pH, and how do you get a good measure of your soil pH?
Well, you can get your pH measured by testing it, having it lab tested. That's what I do. But the thing is, right, if you take a soil that's like really low, let's say it's like 5 pH, and then you start running something like, like a potassium, like potassium silica, Agsil 16, for instance, right? Which is probably going to raise your pH in your water that was at 6.3 to like 10. And if you mix that in, if you did like a slurry test on that, you're going to get like an average, you know what I mean? Because you're basically, it's gonna have what you put into the system will have an effect on the system. And like you were saying earlier, it's gonna take energy for these systems to like maintain homeostasis, to get them back in balance. What happens a lot of times is that the plants are releasing this photosynthetic energy back into these systems to make adjustments. Even in salt systems, they'll do this, right? If they need something, they can produce like an iron reductase if they need iron, but it costs energy, and if they run out of energy, then they that's where you start seeing the deficiencies. So my whole like goal with this type of system is to reduce the total amount of energy that the plant has to release back into the system, to reduce that, so that way it has all of those biological constituents and all that energy that's been produced, and they're able to use that for growth, for production, cell elongation, for cytokinin production, for auxin synthesis, for secondary metabolite synthesis, for systemic induced resistance. That's kind of like the goal.
Aaron, I see you over there loading up a bowl, or you got something in front of you. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this whole pH issue, and how do you go about managing pH in your garden? I know that you're more of a organics guy as well.
I can see where everybody's coming from. I am an organics guy, but I've done it all, man. And when I was doing hydro, I was obsessed with pH. It was everything. And that's because you don't have microorganisms that are driving the system. When you're an organic soil, yeah, you don't want to feed, 8 pH or for pH, but I depend on my microorganisms for a whole lot of things. And one of those is pH balance. And, I know that in a perfect world, I would have perfectly balanced pH after fertilizing my water. But that's why I do organics, because this is more like I am in the tractor with the controls. I'm not in the sandbox. So there's a bigger thing that I'm playing with, and I'm just sort of doing what I can to try and control it. But at the end of the day, it's this giant ecosystem that does what it wants. And I've had good luck with that. But that said, that's sort of the definition of terroir. And that's the downside of growing organically, is you can sort of not have control. I do like Brandon's, like,
I wanted to say, can I just say one thing real quick? I want to also point out the fact too that I'm talking about indoor cultivation, where I'm taking away all the abiotic stress factors like environment, right? Because I'm in a controlled environment, so it is going to be slightly different too. Because you're talking where you're all more like indigenous microorganisms, and then talking about the specific environment to where you're at.
Well, and even the sun spectrum can keep more microbes alive in an indoor. There's no grow light out there.
I'm agreeing.
I know a lot claim it, but they can't.
What I'm saying is, if you're indoor and you're controlling your environment, that's ideal, because then you have no terroir, except for in your soil. And that is to say that if there's any level of things that are happening that are out of your awareness, that's terroir. That is something that you don't understand that's happening, that's affecting the quality of your cannabis, maybe in a good way, it's making it different. So my terroir is high here in California. When I move to Oklahoma, I hope to reduce that, and I hope to bring my control to a higher level. Terroir goes down, control goes up. So I agree with you, Brandon, that when you're in a controlled environment, you can really drive the system. Like, you're both in the sandbox and you're in the controls. And so you have a perfect happy medium between what I do, I feel like you do, between what I do and what Dr. MJ does. But that's just because I come from both sides of the fence, and I've done it all. It's 15 years of doing this, and half of that was indoor non-organics.
Yo, I have some questions. When you guys ever do a tea, do you pH it first? And how about a top dress? Because that might change pH drastically as well. And in living soils, does it usually trend up or down, the pH, or does it eventually just stabilize? Because I think that's probably what happens. But what do you guys know about all those? Please, thank you.
I mean, I can tell you that the pH does have a trend. But again, that's going to be controlled by so many things. But I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but there is a definite trend in the microorganism-driven system soils. So, and it's controlled by, I wouldn't say controlled, it's symbiotically influenced by the plant exudates and the bacterial consumption and the fungal inoculation, and how far spread that is, how old your soil is. All this stuff is going to come into play here when you ask the question of should you be pHing your soil or pHing your water, or...
He asked about teas. Do you use teas and do you pH it?
I don't use teas anymore, but I used to, and I never pH'd them.
Brandon, what about you? Do you use teas?
Okay, so I stopped using teas, but I do make like a biological ferment where I have, everything that you would need to make a tea, but you don't have to guess at the biology. You just strain it in water, or you use it as a top dress like the bokashi. But the thing is, like, whenever I did when I did compost teas, I always started with good quality water that was pH'd. And the reason was because I knew that was going to change as those things brewed and as the microorganisms increased. It would usually drop the pH. But I knew that wasn't a detriment to the system. Like, that pH drop wasn't caused by, like, let's say high bicarbonates or high sodium levels. You know, these were this because I started with something good in the beginning, right? So I know that the drop in pH was due to, you can see it over time as you watch the microbes grow.
Don't a lot of like teas have like humic things, and humics are acids, and acid is a lower number, basic is a higher number. So like recharge and other things, teas often have really lower pHs generally.
Yeah, and then a lot of these metabolites that are produced, like, you know, the lactic enzymes or the lactic acid bacteria, they produce the, you know, lactic acid, and can drop pH. But again, these things are, you know, that these are influence of the biology and not influenced by something that's going to impact the system negatively. And typically when you see pH water that's off, it's because there's something in that water that is going to be detrimental or impact that system negatively.
I also want to say that, like, this all presumes that you even have the right microbes in there in the first place, right?
Exactly.
And at the right quantity. And, you know, it's cool because in the future we'll probably have a much better idea about that for cannabis in particular, but also other plants, and which ones are going to be like closely associated with cannabis or can kind of like exist in the medium kind of as free living microbes but still have good effects.
I have a question on teas because recently it seems that in the past 1 to 2 years, I would say, people have all left the tea bandwagon, and I feel like it used to be a really popular thing. I've done 100 to 200 plus teas in my gardens in my life, and I've only ever seen positive results. I was watching Patrick from Green Bicycles talking about his happy endings tea. Happy endings meaning like the roots, the leaves, and like the end of your plant flowering. But one of the things that is on his label, it says brew it for X amount of hours. I can't remember the exact number, but it says dispose if it smells sour. And my thought with that was, if I ever had a tea that smelled sour, I wouldn't use it. That's indicating that it went anaerobic. If it's a good base with the tea and you're keeping it in the aerobic range and it doesn't smell sour, I think human beings, we have a much better nose than we give ourselves credit for, especially for like smelling sour food and things that have gone bad. So Matthew, I'm sure this is probably like not safe for the IPM, and a lot of people are going to say that it causes lots of risk. But from a general standpoint, if you're not smelling anything sour, and maybe everybody's scent ability is a little different, but if you don't smell something sour, are you avoiding a certain?
Let me chime in on this real quick.
Can I say that you're not anaerobic at least, or can you safely presume that?
I mean, you've even got microbes that can kind of switch between the two and do pretty fine either way as well. So it's definitely, just from that fact alone, it's not a definite. But Aaron has an opinion that's strong.
It's just this, man. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. There's a lot of things you could be doing for your garden, and teas might not be something that is going to be your best use of your time. And there is a risk. It might be small. I did it for like 5 years, 6 years, never had something bad happen. But I've seen equal.
Did you have good happen though? Didn't you like have happy ass
I had
plants
good
that looked
happen.
amazing?
I mean, here I am, right? But I've switched to top dressing, and I've seen equivalent results with half the time. I mean, there's also another thing, and this is important. There is no research that supports ACTs. You can't find a research article that says.
You can find a few that say that it's not good. In fact,
yeah, you'll find more that say it's not good. And I just did a whole special on this, not just, but a few months back, I did. It was the Compost Part 2, I believe. It was the Linda Chalker Scott talk, I think, on FCP, where we talked about this and really covered it in depth. And like, this science just isn't there. And if it comes out, I support it, but I don't think that it's there yet.
Can I get my 2 cents on teas and why I stopped using them as well? One, I started to actually have my results back from my soil test and my saturated paste testing. It didn't make sense to just randomly add a bunch of things together and aerate them with some molasses and add that in the system, because now I'm looking at actual numbers and I have the data. So I don't need to do that, right? And it's like, if it was, you build data sets, and then you have these target ranges, and then you can do the leaf testing like Aaron was doing, and you be able to maximize your soil just by doing the nutrient additives as you get the results back. And if something's a little bit low, you add this. And we're usually talking about like single source mineral inputs. Like if you need something like, potassium, you're going to use like, Ag-Sil potassium silicate. Or if you're going to need something for nitrogen, you might just go to a single nitrogen source like Amino.
But people, sorry to cut you off, but people in I think it's Elaine Ingham's camp, and a lot of the people that they advocate more compost extract for what I understand. But I heard Joshua Steensland the other night on a podcast talking about how a lot of people refer to I think a thimble full of sand has X amount of nutrients, and if you pump enough microbial into your system that it can make that available. He was saying that there's enough nutrients in most soils for I wanted to say 100 years worth of a run. So his claim is if you take the leaves off the plant, you top dress it, and you're just using enough microbes. He's like, if you just keep hitting it with more microbes, it's going to make more stuff available in the soil. This isn't my personal belief, but there are people out there that are having success with using very minimal inputs and using tons and tons of microbial, they'll do a worm casting extract and just put tons and tons of worm castings into a brew if they're seeing that there's something deficient, and then that makes it maybe more available to the plant.
Extract is different from compost tea, though, right? You're talking about
non-aerated. But if we're just talking about increasing microbial populations, I think it's possible from both.
To me, it's a big part of it's kind of what Brandon sort of already said, was that not to me, and I do like the metaphor, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. There's so many risks associated that if you're not doing it right, or some sort of thing happens and you're not checking and not trying to see, and also kind of how would you, right? I know that some people have microscopy skills that lets them see certain microbes and that kind of a thing, but a lot of times microbes, an entire family will look the same, or entire order will look basically the same, and that's why you have microbiologists that do stains, and that's why they have genomicists who will run acid.
Went to school for 18 years to do this stuff, but we think we can just look at a microscope and determine, an exact species. It's kind of silly.
Yeah, I always felt the microscope thing was a little misguided when I found out that there was genomic sequencing and a lot of them looked the same and could do very different things. And if I'm not going to have access to either of those, I'm not going to take the time to learn how to use a microscope when, like I said, in my experience, I'd only ever seen positive results. And until on paper, I agree with everything that you're saying. And I should caution all of the listeners, if you're going to use a compost tea, that these risks are very real. Everybody on this panel is highly educated and skilled at growing. But I think there's a lot of people out there that have used compost teas for years and years and will continue to, and have lots of success. And I don't think molasses is a great sugar source. Personally, I'll just throw that out there. And I don't think that you need to use as much as many people recommend. And just want to say that to wrap up, I guess, my thoughts on the whole tea situation.
I definitely don't begrudge people who use it and other sort of remediation sources. I'm a pretty cool advocate of those black soldier flies you guys know that I was raising for a while, and their exudate has some nice effects, and they do have a nice microbial sort of content, but it's not all perfect, and a lot of the literature I've read about them shows that yes indeed, they can have microbes that might be not so great for humans, or if you don't if you're raising them and you're not following certain guidelines appropriately, you can really hurt yourself, especially if you're immunocompromised or if you have some sort of deficiency in that way, which some people just don't even know until they find out, and other people are already aware of it, but they don't know this factor. So I just think that it's okay to use natural inputs, and in general, and especially theoretically and practically. But for me, I just like to have more control over it at the end of the day. That's just my particular style.
For me, the teas, it's all goes to me. The reason I actually don't use them hardly ever, but it's another tool. So you have to understand what that tool is for. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, what am I looking to achieve by applying a compost tea? A lot of people, if they tell you anything with nutrition in it, well, you don't need a tea for that. You can do top dressing for that. It's a better application, in my opinion, because you can
absolutely.
Yeah. Or it's a different tea entirely. It's a nutritive tea at that point. It's
right.
You could do a soak or a shake, not a full brew.
Yeah, I was going to kind of get to that. If you're looking for nutrition, you can, I think, better than an aerated tea would be what you're talking about. It's sometimes called a tea or an extract, where you just run the water through it, and you're using the physical action of the water to dislodge the. I'm not for nutrient. I'm confused. I was talking about if you go microbial. You do an extract. You could do worm castings or you could do compost, but you run the water through that to extract and try to knock off those microbes into the water. Then you can use that water to spread it across your garden. That's like that's like trying to make more or stretch your compost or stretch your biology. That's what that technique is for.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, if
over
I
a
do,
larger period of time. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, if
Well, go
oh,
ahead.
I just want to interject. If I one thing that I would make a compromise for potentially is if I had the microbes in some capacity and I was trying to kind of like what you're saying, sort of inoculate them. And then if I was pretty confident that I would have mostly these or pretty much only these when I ferment essentially, that would be pretty cool. And I'm a huge advocate of like things going down that route.
I was
One area that I wanted to cover is where the aerated teas are a good application and where I would use it. And that's if I'm trying to use them in an IPM kind of an IPM. I don't know what word I'm searching for, but
clear.
I'm because you're using the biologies, what they do to help you. And what I mean by that is we're putting microbes in water and we're basically allowing them to expand with a food source. Anyone that's brewed a compost tea or worm casting tea will tell you or will know that when you pull those air stones out, they're coated with like this biofilm. Well, that's what microbes do. They have to do that in the soil because if they don't do that, as soon as it rains or water runs through the soil, they get washed away. So it helps actually aggregate the soil a little bit. These exudates that these bacteria do to kind of glues them in place. Well, that stuff you could use to your advantage by doing a foliar application. Spray that on your leaves, the underside of your leaves. It'll stick your microbes to your leaf surface and populate your leaf surface and hopefully prevent the bad bacteria or bad microbes from populating, or at least they'll outcompete the food source that if there is one there. But to pour that over a soil, you're just going to get this like everything's going to glue to the top of the soil. Everything's going to be at the top. Not that that's not to say that's not helpful in any way, but it's very little helpful. Kind of what Aaron was going through is saying it's not all that work that you just did. You're getting very little benefit at that point from that because sticking at the top. It's not even getting down your roots.
I definitely agree with that. The glue aspect. The one thing that always made me nervous as a cultivator in California is we have the CFU count out here. It's talking about the microbial units, and I don't put my stuff through testing, but knowing that might be something I'm going into the legal market soon, I just can't imagine compost tea wouldn't skyrocket your microbial count. And it could be positive, but a lot of them don't discriminate positive from negative. It's just the total number of colony forming units. So I always use the compost tea in the root zone. But like for me, the juice was worth the squeeze because it was free. I lived like literally 2 minutes from the hydro store and they gave it out for free twice a week. And I would dilute it with water. And I saw tons of benefit on my plants, whether I was in hydro or in soil. And in that case, it's like, it was available. And I was just worried that if I did spray it on the foliage, that it's going to stick around all the way until I harvest. And if I'm making hash, then are those microbials going to be in my hash and the water and things like that? And it worried me a little bit. But the whole aggregates thing that you're talking about with the soil, like when you actually pull out the root ball, you can see the organic particles start to like form these like clay balls, and it totally affects the way that the water can flow through the soil and store nutrients and microbes and things like that. So it's a very interesting effect when you haven't ever used it before. And when you start using it, you start noticing when you're breaking down your root ball, it's a fully different texture to the organic matter.
These days, I think the best bet is if you're going organic, when you're starting out, you need to understand that your inputs are everything. So every little fertilizer you add to your soil when you're building your soil is going to be what feeds your plants. So that's really important. It's like stocking your fridge and your pantry. And then when you are watering and you're testing your soil, it's like putting ketchup on or like ranch on your French fries or whatever you do. In Canada, I think they do mayonnaise on their French fries. But
and use mayonnaise with French fries.
Isn't the carbon and the light and that other energy, because like that's what's actually in the trichomes and the things that are actually produced, like the plant matter is carbon all at the end of the day, and that's coming from CO2 in the environment. It's getting energy from the light source. The way that I understand it is the nutrients are sort of like supporting that system more than the actual food. It's a weird comparison going over to people. I don't know if it works as well as we might want it to.
I always want it to work. I force it.
I respect it though. Hey man, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, I forgot. What was I saying? Now I'm
you were just saying
stoned as
how
Keep the refrigerator
every single
stocked
input
with all the
is
hell.
like,
Stock your refrigerator, and then when you're top dressing, like when you're getting your soil test done, and you're like, okay, I'm a little bit low on nitrogen, so I'm gonna add some blood meal. You know, that's your ketchup. Like that's like your topping, bringing it just to the flavor that you want, the exact levels. Like, but when you're growing organically, I think it's important to focus on your foundational inputs, man. Build your soil.
I wanted to say something about that, what you just brought up, like the blood meal. It's super rich in nitrogen, but it's fast available. One thing that I used to notice when I ran a synthetic nutrient line, Heavy 16, they're like, we have 6 forms of calcium, 3 forms of nitrogen, 7 forms of potassium. And I like that with the organic methodology because like there's so many different nitrogen inputs. So you could have blood meal, which is probably going to give you a big spike right now. And then there's some more slow release nitrogen fertilizers as well.
Like
And
feather meal.
yeah, and you can even go vegan, like Brandon has talked about in the past, where you're gonna cut a lot of the sodium out, and you just look at what each one of those inputs has, and like you're saying, you can make it like instead of okay, blood meal is the highest in N, I'm gonna use that, and like thinking about it from like a more hydro perspective, I like the whole buffet perspective where it's like you're giving it as many different little options that the microbes are. I'm gonna take a little blood meal today for some nitrogen, or I'm gonna break that down slowly over time. When
Diversify your inputs. That's what it is.
Can I give you a little heads up on this nitrogen inputs though? Here's a secret, right? So there's very few biologically available forms of nitrogen, and a lot of these have to be converted in the nitrogen cycle, right? So one of the things that is actually works incredible is amino acid nitrogen, right? Soy hydrolysate, amino acid nitrogen offers a food source for microorganisms in these biologically driven systems, as well as available nitrogen to the plants and amino acids that are biologically available. So what ends up happening is these plants get the nitrogen, but they also get the amino acids, which they then don't have to spend energy to biosynthesize because they're already available. So it equates to more conserved energy when you're using amino acid nitrogen because it doesn't have to be converted by the plant, it doesn't have to be converted by the microbes, and it doesn't have to be biosynthesized by the plant.
Well, it still gets biosynthesized by the plant, right? Like it still processes in the plant.
It processes it, but what I'm
the
saying
plant doesn't have to
exude.
exude.
The plant will create internally a lot of these amino acids, and so they don't have to biosynthesize as much as they need because there's.
Oh, you meant the amino
acids
acids. You meant the amino acids.
Yeah,
I have
nutrients.
I heard a talk on this once, and the presenter said you needed a certain amount of nitrogen in your mix as well. Is there do you believe that, Russ?
So I've read
Brandon,
some papers that said that certain plants do well with a different type of nitrogen at different points during development.
Maybe that was it. Yeah.
I actually read a paper on that, but it wasn't related to cannabis.
Do you have strictly amino acid nitrogen? It's and it's ammonium, right?
No, it's completely
totally different.
Biologically available nitrate nitrogen.
Yeah,
right, but it's made available. Yeah,
nitrates are the form that are uptaken by the plant.
Yeah, it's 100% soluble nitrate, 13%, 13.62 is what I'm using actually, and it's 80% amino acids. And it's the only source. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'll do top dresses with that, but I can also water this into the system at any point that I want to. Like I can load up if I want to, I can cut back on it. And it's one of the things that, like, if the system is perfectly balanced, without that energy from that nitrogen, it'll just completely shut down, right? So this is part of the biological crop steering, where I can kind of bottle feed both nitrogen and potassium for the different plant responses at different periods. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm building all these data sets. The next thing is specific cultivar testing, which is about to start happening. And then I'll be able to have those exact numbers for what I should be using for each cultivar. But I like this method because I don't have to worry about any type of nitrogen cycling conversion, which means there's more energy in that soil to cycle other things. And it also means that I can be completely reliant on what I'm putting in there. Like I have complete control over it.
I think with your soil
Martin's
testing,
popping off, dude.
I love
He's
his-
got crazy glasses on.
Brandon, I think that your methodology is a very sound one. I mean, doing with the access to the soil testing that you have, you're getting great results. I think that it's 100% a great methodology. I think more people are going to try and adopt that strategy, I think, moving forward with organic cannabis cultivation, because it gives you more of the control that you would have in a hydroponic system that a lot of people are looking for. You're going to get more consistent results and the yields that I think a lot of people are looking for as well.
You know, there's something to be said about the difference between organic and hydroponic inputs. Brandon was saying you're usually going to be using single source inputs, and that oftentimes is the case with organics. But the weird thing is, if you don't have a requirement, a soil test based to need, say, copper sulfate is a great example, then it's not organic. You can't use it. It's not organic. But here's the weird thing about our country is if you have a soil test and you are low in copper and you're mid-run, you can use copper sulfate in your soil. And that's an organic input, certified OMRI, boom, 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 check marks all across the board. But I think organic cannabis will be a little bit more stringent. Don't use copper sulfate in the middle of your run. It'll kill a lot of, it's actually an antifungal. But that was just an example of a weird organic, nuance.
There was also be a trade-off, right? So what happens if you need some of these other mineral inputs? That you have to remember that it's all about energy exchange too. So the plant is going to have to release more energy into that system to get copper if it's deficient, right? It's going to have to either release an exudate that is going to attract a type of microorganism that is going to help assist in the uptake of that, or it's going to have to create some kind of reductase compound that is going to free it up from one of the mineral sources that are already in the soil. But again, it takes energy, so there's always a trade-off. It might be cutting back on biology, but you might be actually saving energy.
Right, and it depends on where you're at in your cycle. If you can afford the little loss in microbiology, and this cycle, actually, I was a little low in copper, and it took like 4 weeks, but the kelp ended up bringing it up. It just took about a month.
One of the things that I've noticed is I added another consortium, which is the Bacillus subtilis trichoderma combination, and it seems to have made the solubility of calcium higher. So I'm going to continue this program and collect more data, and we'll see where we end up with it.
Aaron, do you throw azomite on your soil, and do you, Brandon? Because that thing has everything. Maybe not the right amounts that you want, but a little bit, I think, can't hurt.
Listen, I used azomite for years, and I stopped, and that was about a year ago, because one of the things azomite breaks down to is aluminum. So if you go, well, you can't now, but on my Instagram, I had those test results, and my aluminum numbers were really high. And that's because I've been using the soil for so long using azomite. And that's great if you're growing hydrangeas and you want blue hydrangeas, because that's something aluminum does, is it brings a blue color out, and something that already has that potential. But in my soil, I don't want to build up heavy metals like aluminum in my plant matter. So I don't use azomite. I've switched to what did I switch to? There's like this other rock dust.
Does it have all the
Basalt?
benefits?
Straight up bath salts. No, it's granite.
Is it?
I think it's granite.
Yeah. Is it just? What's the phrase?
Basalt. It was basalt.
Oh, I see.
I think granite is a product of basalt, or the other way around.
That is correct. Basalt is a
One
product
of
of, or no, basalt has granite in it. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So whatever's
There
closer,
are different
whatever-
igneous rocks.
Right.
They're
whatever
not.
you
But they don't
one
have all
isn't a,
those
a
micronutrients that
component of the
Azomite
other.
has.
They're just different igneous rocks.
I
those
use-
don't have the near the amount of trace minerals, right? The basalt and granite dust. Or
I'm not interested in the trace minerals in Azomite. I mean, there's
Right.
kelp is great for trace minerals. And
well, I know
use
copper was in there too. That's why I was thinking about it when you were saying
rock dust. Rock dust is good because it actually adds, and this is sort of up for debate, but it adds a paramagnetivity to the soil, so it can actually align some of
specifically those two. No other ones that we know of.
Correct.
Yeah.
They align the structure of the soil in a sort of like a microcosm. This is my understanding. This is my junior level understanding of like this like microcosm world that's sort of like this. Well, it sort of aligns them like this, and it allows water to pass more easily through them. This is a very basic level understanding, and maybe somebody else can expand on that, but that's my understanding. Paramagnetivity.
I always hear it
Like a
marketed
was-
as that.
chemistry kind of thing.
I was going to say, I wish I could expand, but I think you're right. Just structurally makes it so that everything works better together with the paramagnetic rocks. or
Stands
rock
it up.
dusts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I there was actually a guy who did an experiment. He put I don't remember if it was granite or basalt, one of the two, in a Ziploc bag on either side of a pot of soil, and he grew a plant like that, like with the, it's got a pot with 2 bags of the granite dust on the outside, and he's got one next to it or in the other room or whatever as a control without that. And the one with was like 4 times the size, and he had incredible results, repeatable every time, and the dust wasn't touching the soil. This was a paramagnetic effect that it had on the soil without touching it. So this is not nutrient cycling at all. This has nothing to do with it. This is strictly
Magic.
That's why I say yes, PFM, pure fucking magic, dude.
I believe in magic. I mean, I'm down. You guys know me.
It's fun to speculate on for sure. I think that a lot of us would rather have, like, at least there was a side-by-side trial. It's anecdotal, but maybe you could expand upon it with more scientific evidence.
It'd be cool to
it's always
see
fun.
that. It'd be cool to see that research report. On the Future Cannabis Project, we talked a little bit about a couple of controversies. One of them was whether insects can digest sugar and other things, and the answer is yes. And you can check out that video if you want to learn more about that. But the other thing was the idea of like magnetism with regards to insects, and the idea that their antennae might be able to, I guess, detect certain frequencies or be able to home in on plants. And it's interesting because there are organs that certain insects have developed, I think, convergently mostly. So it's arose in multiple times in multiple different groups of insects, their lineages, I mean. And like some of them do have some like ability to detect like magnetism. So they've got like little, I think they're called Johnston's organs, little magnetoreceptor organs. I'm famously like some ants use it to like orient themselves. But what I'm curious about, and what I think kind of became sort of, well, it didn't come out quite that this was the case, or that there was research that kind of peer reviewed this, but the idea of them being able to home on plants exactly because they have some sort of bioelectromagnetic frequency or something like this. That's the part that I'm not quite sure really has been shown to be the case. But this greater idea of like using magnetism and electromagnetism with plants is still kind of an interest to me, and I think it's kind of interesting to hear of these sort of stories.
Being a bad host over here, trying to get high, just vaporizing. You see me struggling around with my bong. I'm like sitting in front of the camera and like trying to wiggle around my equipment. At this moment, I guess it'll be a good time to ask everybody what they're token on, if they are. It looks like Brandon, Spartan, and myself. I'll start off by saying I'm having some grape pie, and that was mixed up with some GMO crossed to MTF, which is something thunderfuck from Alaska. Spartan, what you token on over there?
Dude, I'm sitting over here trying to figure out what it was I just ground up. I don't know. Whatever it is, it was something somebody gave me, and I just ground it up. It's just a pile on my trim tray right now, so I have no idea, but it's weed and it's getting me high, so I'm not.
Love it. Gotta love it. I just got a little attachment from my bong for my whip so that it goes into the 14 mil. Brandon, it looks like you're doing some dabs over there. I think you told us maybe before the show, but I can't remember if you said it on air or not yet. What are you token on?
This one is some Hilltop Gardens extracts. I think it was called like llama poo or something like that. I don't know. It smells just like Northern Lights number 5. Exactly like it.
Who's the glass artist? I saw that you just got a shipment recently of quite a badass collection of some recycler glass. That one is one of the many you got, it looked like. Damn, that thing's cool.
Yeah, dude. So I actually got this from a guy on Instagram. He hit me up. His name was Michael Ray Glass on IG. And he's like, hey, I'm a glass blower. I have a couple leftover pieces that the stores didn't pick up. And he's like, wanted to trade for some seeds. So I shot him some seed packs, and then he shot me 2 rigs. He shot me another one. They have like opals in them and stuff too. They're dope. I think this thing would cost like probably $1,300 in a head shop.
Oh yeah, man. Some of them maybe even more. I was wondering if you put it up for like a bid in an auction, some of those things go for several thousand, especially with like the little opals and fancy recyclers. That ain't no China glass. That's some handmade art right there. No offense to anybody. I'm smoking on some, not China glass, Canadian glass. Oh shit, Noah the Grow is joining us. Shout out to Lucky. I heard him chirping in the background. Aaron, what you smoking on as I let Noah in the room?
I'm smoking on Slurricane, and it's the shittiest nugs from my garden because I like to do my people like that.
Yeah, that's good on you. Brandon used to do it that way. He only smoked his small buds out here in San Diego, and he'd give the good buds out to the people. But I wanted to say I just got the Slurricane cut with some cherry pie that I got passed back to me.
Whose cut did you get?
Dude, fuck, I'm forgetting his names. Matthew, you actually know. I can't. It's something Desert
Rose Nursery.
Desert Rose Nursery.
Okay. I
Didn't
have
a number or
finest.
anything.
I have finest Slurricane.
First of all, I just want to say that whenever I hear the name Slurricane, I am reminded of my childhood, and then I'm thinking that's such a great name. I love that, Slurricane. Like it just sounds like some. I mean, I think it is actually some kind of icy smoothie kind of a thing, right?
There's a drink called
It's a drink by E40.
Oh, well, it makes me think of like those ices that you would get on like a hot day, with like, red number 20 and blue number 4 and all that stuff. But
the good stuff.
Anyway, so I just wanted to say that, and also say that it's cool that you guys only take or that you have that propensity to take the small ones and then give the good ones out to other people. But it sounds really great. You make me envious. Like I want to try some.
It's Purple Punch crossed to Do-Si-Do's, and it was by Archive, did the Do-Si-Do, and they made one called Slurricane. But there's also one
Isn't it in-house?
In-house genetics
In-house.
made Slurricane, but Do-Si-Do's was Archive's cut or cross. So they also released their own Slurricane, so there was a little bit of a controversy. We got a raised hand by Noah the Grower, and I'd love it if you could jump in.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm Noah the Grower from Instagram with 2 E's, and sorry I'm a little bit late here. Had some family stuff, but happy to be here. And how you guys doing?
Good. We're just getting medicated. We were all talking about what we're smoking on. I'm actually vaporizing. Shout out to Vapor Brothers, the VB1 from 1999, one of the oldest vaporizers in the game, to my knowledge. They use that fancy-ass European wood to make sure there's no off-gassing of any harmful chemicals or pesticides or glues and things like that. And it's a pretty smooth vape. Now that I hooked it up to the bong, I like it even more. So, Noah, what you smoking on?
Right now, some GG4, but I got some platinum and some Do-Si-Do number 55. I just pulled down that I'm waiting a couple more days for. So, yeah, this GD4 this plant turned out pretty good, and yeah, I'm excited to smoke it. It's good.
Is the Dosido 55 from Archive? You're up there in that area, right? They have a shop in Portland, right?
Yeah, it is. It is from Archive, and I actually tried another one that they had, the Dosido F2, which was like Dosido number, like I don't even remember, across with another one, and it was kind of hermy tendency. It had like, it didn't like herm, like the the bananas didn't open and it didn't spray, but like it definitely had that tendency. So I cut it after that, and it was a lot heavier yielder than the Dosido 55, but the Dosido 55 was a lot more like greasy and like a lot more crystally stuff. So I'm happy to have that one, and I love it. It's one of my favorites.
Kyle, you've been awfully quiet over there as per usual, but what are you toking on if you are indulging? I know that sometimes it has been giving you anxiety lately. Do you got some good CBD or anything? Oh shit, we got Aaron the grower walking through the garden. Not to cut you off, Kyle, but Kyle, you can talk and then we'll go over to Aaron.
Yeah, I got some Mendo perp that I've been. Well, to be honest, it's Mass Medical's star pupil, but apparently the background of that is actually Mendo perp. But I've been smoking on that, and I don't quite know that. It's like I can basically smoke as much as I want of that stuff, and I get like high but calm. So I'm sure there's some probably CBD influence in it.
You cut out. I don't know if you're still talking or you started getting a little choppy and then it cut out. But yeah, there's definitely. He was the one I was referring to earlier who kind of fell from grace, Mass Medical. They've got a lot of controversy behind the legitimacy of their strains and a lot of other controversy that I don't want to get into. We try to keep it positive on this show because the last time we called out a breeder, fucking people were like threatening Shane in person, like real life threats of Shane to the Cheap Home Grow podcast. So it's fucked up, man, but people can find out the negative shit for themselves. It's out there. Aaron the grower, positive shit. Speaking of, you've got some plants in the garden still. I know it might not be as many as you did once before, but how are things going over there? The garden looks pretty nice. It looks like you're chilling out now in the recliner.
These are going to be throwaways. I was making fun of these plants all season. I didn't care about them. And then that's what happens is like when you look away from weed, it just blows your mind every time. So yeah, just some beautiful nugs growing in some 10-gallon pots. Haven't fertilized them once, just watered them. And now I'm just enjoying the view, man. And I'll let you guys enjoy it with me here.
Sometimes when you ignore the ladies, they end up performing better for you.
It blows my mind, man. No matter what happens, they always make me go, what?
Sungrown 707, shout out to him in the chat. He's a pretty awesome dude. I look forward to visiting him at some point up there. But and you as well, Aaron, at some point. But he was talking about earlier in the chat about how sometimes like the tortured grapes make the best wine. And I was actually arguing the other side because I'm like, there's some motherfuckers like Brandon who are growing inside in controlled conditions where the plant's not stressed at all and they're pumping out crazy amounts of terpenes and really good tasting cannabis. So I think you can definitely make good tasting cannabis inside. I think they're doing that at Mitten Canico, Spartan Growing over there. They're killing it. Crazy high numbers of cannabinoids. I haven't seen your guys' terpene tests at all, but I'd imagine from everybody.
We stress the shit out of our plants, even indoors. We stress the shit out of them. At least we do. I mean, I'd push back on that. We go in there, we strip leaves, we fucking plant train. We stress the fuck out of them.
Good stress, loving stress, tough parent stress.
Directed stress for the outcome.
It's like weightlifting, bend them over, pull off a leaf here and there. It's like that. I know I was making fun of equating it to humans earlier, but like when we work out, we tear our muscle. We're actually breaking it down to make it bigger. So with a plant, I think sort of a similarity with like low stress training. When you bend it over, that thin stalk, you literally see it get a knuckle. It gets bigger, it gets fatter, it gets stronger, and it can hold more weight. So that's one of the comparisons that I actually feel is like easy enough to make because it's taking that damage or that stress and making it stronger in the long run. And if you look at plants that are grown outdoor in the wind, that wind blowing them back and forth, I think it strengthens up the stalks quite a bit and makes more roots. That's why I literally go in there. My fans aren't strong enough indoors to, if I had them any stronger, it would start to cause leaf damage in the limited amount of space I have. So I go in and I shake my plants every single day, at least twice a day. Just
so glad I came into this moment in the conversation. The literal intro to my website says, and it hasn't dropped yet, but it's going to soon. A plant with deep roots has no reason to fear the wind. And African proverb, just really succinct, hits me in the feels. Thought I'd share that.
I'll say this. I'm from Ohio, and we had a tree that was 100 feet tall, and a a 150-mile-an-hour wind shear came off the lake, and it ripped that tree straight out of the ground. The roots yanked 10 feet worth of asphalt out of our driveway, and it crushed my neighbor's truck. And so some plants want to fear the wind, depending on how high that wind gets. And there's a reason that people make those fucking cages around their
I'm
plants.
just laughing that you pushed back on that proverb, Jack. That's funny.
That's good.
Sorry,
That's funny.
African proverb.
That
but
is funny.
I seen it with my own two eyes.
Deep,
I literally
not
stood in the
wide,
root
Jack.
mass.
Deep. We need deep.
That was that was more of a over my cold dead roots situation. As far as I'm concerned.
I'm sure the ground was saturated with water, which definitely does help that topple.
Did you guys hear about the Oklahoma ice storm that just came in a couple days ago?
I saw it on
Ruined
your IG.
everything that I've gotten started.
You showed us the
it was
pictures.
insane. Everything was frozen solid. Like, hey, I drove past this street that had a bunch of Razor scooters that are like in a row, and they were literally all encased in ice, like a solid, probably a good 2 inches, all encased.
Fuck those scooters.
I remember,
Dude, more than 20.
I remember you mentioning, or you mentioned to me in a comment where there was some like rime like plants were like literally they were encased in ice, like what you're talking about. Was that in Oklahoma?
Yeah. So, dude, on my feed, I posted a video of like one of those like cat, what are they? The cattails or the dude, the whole thing was like inch solid around, completely frozen. And it happened like overnight, dude. It was 85 degrees. And then all of a sudden, dude, this ice storm came in and froze everything. Like if you go outside, every single house on every single block in this state has a huge pile of trees sitting on their driveway to get picked up by the city. There was like, dude, my homeboy's been out of power for like 6 days now. It's insane.
I was just going to talk about my contractor said there was more than 20 poles down in my county in Oklahoma. And I was next on the list to get electrical put into my property because it's raw land. So you got to have they got to come bury a line. Yep. And then the ice storm hit, and now I have a 30-day hold.
Hey, I got people, dude. We are electric. We just got it all done. We got new poles. We got fucking new boxes, and our electric for the greenhouses are getting installed tomorrow.
Oh, you got people.
You're gonna have to wait like 9 fucking months for the city to do it, and even if you paid them.
Anyone you can shout out or feel comfortable shouting out? Do they have like a business name that because I'm sure there's a lot of people in Oklahoma that are listening that are in the cannabis cultivation space. I don't know if you want to like give out your person and make them too busy.
I'm not I'm not the one that did all the.
The thing is,
statistics.
In my county,
I'll find out for you.
It just depends on your county because this has to do with the electric company. So like this is there's like, dude, there's 680 people in the county I'm moving to. Like this is like there's like 10 guys that do the entire county. So like things are just slow. So
yeah. The arborists are making a killing right now. And if you got a wood chipper right now, oh, you're gonna come up, son.
And yes, Barton, I snow is novel to me. When I was a kid, I visited my grandparents, my maternal grandparents in Kentucky, and we narrowly escaped a blizzard. And you want to hear a very sad West Coast story. Sadder than this is that when I was in high school, I knew somebody whose mother was like, we were like going cross country, or not, we went to Arizona and back. And like the snow started to fall and there was a little bit of frost on the ground. And she was like, that's it. I can't do it. I can't drive in a snowstorm. And I was like, it was amazing. I had to take over. I had to like drive out of that, like totally not problematic level of snow. I just can't believe some people, but I do find rime and blizzards and that kind of thing pretty awesome.
Dude, I found the same thing when I got to California coming from Florida 9 years ago. It was like, it started raining and everyone's like, oh my God, it's raining. And I'm like, yeah, it's raining for the first time in like 45 days, you guys. Calm down.
Me and Spartan are like laughing over here because I'm from Ohio. He's from Michigan. We get like feet and feet of snow. I had at least 18 years there where it was just snowing all the fucking time. My wife is from Arizona. She visited first time for Christmas. and we literally had a blizzard. We got stuck at my brother's house, couldn't go to my parents' house because there was an actual blizzard, which is like a certain amount of inches per hour and like a certain level of wind. So literally, like, they can't even plow the roads because as soon as it gets plowed, the wind just blows it right back onto the road, and it's like not safe. It's too the visibility is too low. It was quite the experience for her being from Arizona, Tucson, and to go to the greater Cleveland area of Ohio and get just dumped on by lake effect snow was quite eye-opening for her. And it, like Matthew said, very novel because she's from an area where she didn't have snow on Christmas ever.
It's very pretty. It can be, at least, and especially if you're not snow shoveling yourself, right? But I do also remember, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was going up to Lone Pine, California, and I think me and some friends, the same ones that I was telling you about earlier, growing cannabis up in the high desert. I remember that there were like meters of snow. It was amazing. It was like some sort of like winter storm or something had happened, and it was just got really cold, and there was snow everywhere, and it was kind of pretty, honestly.
I liked it for like a few days. Like, I always wanted a white Christmas, but living through the winter is brutal. Like, getting up
Yeah.
if you didn't have your car in the garage, having to scrape ice off your windshield and like literally take a broom and plow snow off of your hood of your car and your roof, and it's not a fun time. I don't know how the people in Michigan can put up with that, because it's like half the year for some people, especially up north, like in the UP and where Eagle's at up there. They get pounded most of the year. It's great for growing cannabis though. Shit, you can draw that cool air in. He doesn't even run AC, and just that cool Michigan air. He can
It
grow.
destroys all those pests too. That's the thing that I always fixate on, is like you actually get like a hard reset for the environment for the most part in some places.
We're lucky in that regard, and that's our trade-off, and that's what I always tell people when they're bitching in the wintertime. I'm like, well, that's because we don't have shit that can kill us, in the summertime. Bugs and fucking venomous shit, they don't come up here when it's cold, so we don't have to worry about that. So I'll take the cold. But yeah, I mean, it's hilarious to hear you guys, because I mean, I had a similar situation. I lived in San Antonio, Texas for a time, for years, and yeah, they didn't. I mean, just the word snow would scare people down there, and I'm doing 80 on the roads. I'm like, what do you guys even? There's no snow. What is this?
They cancel school when they get an inch.
Yeah, their roads are a dream to drive on down there because they don't have snow plows tearing them up every year.
Yeah. Every year your streets get destroyed by the winter, doesn't it?
Completely. Yeah.
They can't have the reflectors in Michigan. Like out here in California, they have these little like reflectors on the road. So like if you're like getting over into the other person's lane, it sort of acts as like the ass tickler. Like you feel your fucking tire vibrate, and you're like, oh, I need to pay more attention, get back into my lane. In Ohio or Michigan, they'd get clipped off the road by a snowplow, so you can't have them. So it's just chipped paint that rarely gets redone sometimes.
And they're overfixing it, so then you always have road construction too. So yeah, that's always fun.
It's great people. The tough weather though, for sure. A lot of good cannabis growing up there though. I got to shout out Michigan. It's like California and the Midwest. Like they've had good cannabis for a long ass time, and they have a lot of people that are doing it really well, in my opinion, on the home grow and commercial side. It's very surprising to see the Michigan. I feel like is so far ahead of many other states in that area in that regard.
Yeah, we're as far as sales and everything goes, we're knocking on the door of medical sales. We're number 2 only to California. I mean, it's hard to compete against the country over there, but we're doing what we can do. But I think we're 5th in sales the end of August right now. We just surpassed Las Vegas, or not Las Vegas, Nevada. Sorry.
Yeah,
Which I'm
well,
sure
that's
90% of their sales is Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's probably the same thing.
I wanted to say shout out to P Breeding, Predicated Breeding. Kyle had to jet out. That's pbreeding.com if you want to find his genetics. He's more of a feminized seed guy, and he likes to stress test his genetics. I think that's usually what he says when he signs off. But pbreeding.com, and you can find him at Predicative Breeding on all the social media platforms. So shout out to Kyle. Thank you for coming, bud.
Dude, shout out to you, Jack, for remembering people's sign off. Like you're like, I think that's what he like nails everybody's sign off. What a great host. Cheers.
Yeah, he's like, oh, what's that thing they always do or that they really care about? I know what that is. I'm going to say the thing that is.
thoughtful son of a bitch, that guy.
It's hostly duties, I guess, and people do like to find him, even though he was quiet. I know a lot of people are interested in his work. He's got new stuff coming. A lot of people that have gotten his old stuff really enjoyed it. So I'm happy that he shows up to the panel, even if he doesn't jump in a lot. A lot of times, I feel like some people are more shy to come in, and I should do a better job maybe roping them into the conversation some more times. But I think we were having a great conversation tonight, so I just kind of wanted to let it flow, and also wanted to get nice and medicated with you all this evening. I want to give a shout out to Raptor Grow in the chat. He is out here in California as well. Max Grim and Ruby, some of the regulars, Tommy Trichomes, W Digger, Abolished Aquatics. It's got a new name. Shout out to Abolished. That used to be Abolished Farms, I believe.
He must have a new fish tank.
No, it's actually a new channel. He's got 2 channels. He still has Abolished Farms, but he's also he's getting into breeding fish for aquatics, I guess. And so he wanted to have 2 channels so that they weren't mixed, because you know, if you have a YouTube channel about fish, well, you want to make that for everyone, because kids are also involved. In fact, his son is really into fish too. So it's a thing that he's doing with his son. So he didn't want to mix that with the cannabis and then get, like, you know, on the cannabis side gets us some kind of a everything's got to be flagged, you know, 18 or adults or something like that, and then it's going to screw up what he's trying to do over there. So
Makes sense.
Plus, you don't want to piss off the people that are like, man, we're here for cannabis. Quit showing us all this fish shit. Even though you can use that fish shit in cannabis, which
oh,
shout
dude,
out to
he's already
Hydroponic
doing.
Steve.
He's doing cool shit already. He took like a little piece of styrofoam, like something you get in packing material when you order something from Amazon or something, right? And he just put like holes in it and put his clones through it, his cuttings through it. And he had clones just floating like a raft, sticking about this far down into his fish tank. And you could sit there and look at it through the fish tank to look for root development. It was so fucking cool. And they even fucking started, last I heard, they started the little white nubs like you get in a cloner. You know what I mean? You start seeing the little nubs on the outside of the skin of the plant. That's where he's at on it right now. And he's not doing anything but just letting them float. He's not misting them or doing anything. Just letting them float on top of his fish tank.
The easier, the better, in my opinion, if it works well. And there's probably lots of microbial diversity within that water. I know Potentonic Steve often references how much, I think NASA did a study on the microbial diversity of different soils, and aquaponic soils had, I think, the highest counts by like a pretty large margin as far as diversity goes.
A vast margin, yeah.
It's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, the way he said it to me, I don't know. The way he said it to me, I think I always forget it, because he said like they took samples of the very worst sample of the aquaponics, still had a greater diversity than the very best living soil sample that they had, as far as the diversity of microbes.
It makes me wonder though, just from like looking at what Brandon is able to do with like biological crop steering, where you know exactly what each one is. It felt more like aquaponics is feeling more like a terroir thing, where Aaron was talking about earlier, like you're kind of dialing down the control when you have that large of a diversity of microbes. It's like, do you really know which one is good and bad and how they actually work? Where Brandon's working with consortiums, where he has an understanding of how they work, what they're liberating, and things like that. I'm sure the diversity is probably, and I was talking about that earlier with inputs, organic inputs, like different nitrogen sources and things like that. Maybe it's the same way with the microbes. Maybe it's better to have a diversity, but oftentimes it seems like stuff like trichoderma will dominate, or certain ones, if you don't continually update or re-put in consortiums like Brandon's talking about each week, it can sort of trend one way and one thing will dominate, and no matter what you start off with, it ends up being, maybe that's why the living soils were lack of diversity, because one thing will take over and it won't be super diverse, but there will be a good population.
The plant chooses what it works with too a lot of the times.
That's what my strategy is in my home grow, is diversity of microbes. If I'm feeding anything, or if I'm adding anything to my water, the things I would consider would be some kind of a microbial source. Any kind of a nutritional thing, like I'm looking to eventually be nutrition for the plant, that would be usually as a top dress. If it's not already in the, I mean, it should already be in the soil, but if I'm seeing like a deficiency or something, then I'm going to address that with a top dress. And then, but every week, like maybe once a week, or maybe sometimes 2 to 3 times a week, depending on the plant. Like if the plant looks healthy as fuck to me and just looks super happy, I might just do once a week, just give it some kind of a microbial inoculant, something. But if they don't look like that, then they might get 2 to 3 during the week. You know, I mean, with their watering, I might throw, you know, I've got fish shit. I've got, I'm talking literally the product called fish shit.
Recharge.
Yeah, I've got recharge. I've got, you know, all these samples of different things. I've got Organitech stuff, which I kind of like that stuff too. I've been really liking that. So I just like to throw in, I mean, I got my own castings that I could do a top dress and then water that in. So
See, that's what my strategy typically is. I was going to ask, how long do you typically see a result if you do a top dress? Like if you're like, oh, I see a nitrogen deficiency, I want to top dress something nitrogen, for example. That might not be the case always. And if you did that alone versus if you top dressed, and then I typically will top dress like worm castings, and then I'll do a worm casting extract where I just put it in a bucket, mix it up with water, basically get all those microbes off, and then I'll pull the castings, dump the water, and then I'll top that castings that I used right on top of the system. But I feel like that gives me a little bit like 2 to 3 days, where if I just top dress it and water in, maybe like a week. So I was curious what your thoughts on timelines are like for that.
yeah, so I guess I should have been more clear. Like if I'm seeing a bad deficiency that I need to be addressed quickly, I'm not even top dressing. That's where I do some kind of foliar. But if I've had to like address something like that, and I've kept good notes, and I know, okay, this strain, I know with my base mix, it runs out in X day of X nutrient. Then I do a week before top dress to address that, to get ahead of that problem, and hopefully not see that problem. So that's how I address a nutrient deficiency. I note it, and I address it with a foliar, but at the same time, I make sure in my notes to know that next run, I'm going to hit that at that time, a week before, whatever the date I wrote down, like X time, either being in veg or being in flower. I'll just put it, week whatever in flower, week whatever in veg. And then I'll know to just back it up a week and make sure, address it with a top dress. Or even sometimes if I know it's something special like that, like, oh, this plant always runs out in flower of nitrogen, it runs out of nitrogen. So when I'm transplanting into the last pot, I might just mix into that soil my nitrogen top dress, just mix it in. I do like to do that. If I'm doing a transplant anyway, that gives me a chance to mix my top dress more thoroughly instead of just doing, a top dress. So
I think something you're doing really well is using the same pot and system every time, and that allows you to know, like, if I flip at the same size roughly with that same clone, you're going to have a rough idea. A lot of people knock organics for not having control, but if you're aware, like Spartan and many others are, or if you do soil testing like Brandon's doing, you can get these insights, or just know that plant and know that pot size and say, well, I've got X amount of juice in the tank. It might run out at this time a week ahead. You're addressing the problem before it even happens, and then you just have a nice healthy run all the way through. And I think a lot of people could benefit from using those types of strategies in organics, because sometimes in flower you can't foliar. Like right now I'm running plants I've never ran before. 2 out of the 3 plants are super happy, all in the same soil, and then the one in the middle is just like a little less happy. But I've been trying to hit it with microbes in the root zone, and top dressing different things here and there to try and address it. And I think there's a lot more control if people notice early, because I think oftentimes the plant show signs before people might necessarily see them. And if you can notice early and try to address it, the earlier the better. Literally 12-hour differences I've seen make huge differences. Like if I address it at night versus the next morning.
Oh yeah, and I, in your situation, like flower, and I couldn't do a foliar, then I just always usually first step is always just worm castings. I just throw worm castings at it because it's got your microbial. And my worm castings anyway, I really give them what most people would top dress on their plants. So, all those organic top dresses, that's kind of worm food in my point, because I want the worms to break that down, because that's my oh shit anyway. So if the worms break that down, I'm my oh shit fucking answer to that is my already broken down nutrition in my worm bin.
You're starting to sound more and more like Coot every day.
Good. That's a good thank you.
I know. Fucking right it is. Yeah.
I heard that Clackamas Coot's Instagram is offline.
Dude, how funny is it? Him and I went offline the same day, totally didn't even talk about it. And we're like, what? You're off? He's like, yeah, I'm off. You're, oh my God. Yeah. So
he's not gone,
big
guys.
Things, dude. He sent me a chapter of the book today. Woo!
Oh, sweet.
So it's shit's popping. We're
Awesome.
Gonna see. Yeah.
I do want to take this time to say though, everybody who's wondering about Coot, he's not gone, man. He's got a webpage, and it's pretty easy to remember. collectimuscoot.com. So go
Coots.
there. He's got
an S.
Coots. Oh, I'm sorry, Coots.com.
Yeah.
And he's got blogs. I mean, you can keep up with him. Just you can find him there. Just go to his webpage.
Shout out to Coot. He recommended the worm castings that I'm using. My local place, I really liked. It's Center for Environmental Innovation, and they do their own worm castings that I just really loved. It's all organic. They use like an organic restaurants, like leftover waste and things like that. And I really like that worm castings. But since I had to switch because they were closed for COVID, I'm really happy using the Coot recommended worm castings. I'm probably gonna. I did a full layer top dress, watered in extract, and then I top dressed bokashi over that. What I realized is I have so much fucking airflow. I might have to do a straw mulch because I'm not a crop cover guy. I've tried it too many times and just more of a mulch person. But even with the bokashi, I was like expecting to see with that and the worm castings microbial bloom. But because there's so much airflow over the top of my root zone, it just dries it out real quick. And I'm thinking that maybe I'd get more of a benefit if I was retaining that moisture at the top layer of the soil.
So you could get a free mulch layer by just throwing the leaves down there. That airflow is going to dry them out, so they probably won't break down, but they'll be a mulch layer.
I tried
It
that
takes
one
a
run.
significant
It
amount
just
of
makes me worry
leaves.
about bugs, like attracting pests potentially, but I didn't end up having any issues when I did it, so it could definitely.
Let me ask you this: where do you think those bugs would come from, though? I mean, those leaves of your plants, and you're putting them down onto your soil. I mean,
I just didn't know if like maybe decaying matter on the soil surface would be more of a attractant than just having like the.
I agree with you, but I'm thinking that if your airflow is such that it's keeping that dry enough to the bokashi's drying out, I think that the leaves would dry out, and the bokashi might get some of that moisture and start being able to do their job. That's all
Matt,
I was thinking there.
Are plants going to be attracted to living tissue or decaying tissue? And I mean, our bugs, I'm sorry, our pests, whatever I said, fuck whatever I said. Are pests going to be attracted?
You said plants, dude. You said
oh God, I'm roasted,
like,
dude. I'm doing my best to paddle faster.
I'm like 1 day away from Halloween. Could have answered that question earlier, but yeah. So your question is, are pests going to be attracted to like decaying organic matter?
Yeah, or is it more going to be attracted for like your composters?
I mean, mostly the latter, right? Because a lot of pests are typically just purely herbivorous, so like they need the plant, and they need to be either generalist enough that they can feed on both your cannabis plant and also another plant as well, which they certainly exist. I think it's totally
about,
valid
like,
to like deny
leaf molds?
that resource. Yeah, leaf molds too.
Aren't they generally beneficial though?
What?
Are they like I feel like Spartan says that they're good for going into his worm bin maybe, but that's maybe different than going on top of your plant. Would it be going on top of your plant be an issue?
For molds?
No,
well, like the black leaf mold. Like I feel
that's
like
a different. No, not non-issue.
The molds of the decomposer of the leaves, basically, you know, it's breaking that nutrition down for you. So
they only work because the plant's like the tissue's dead.
Right.
So basically, when people say leaf mold, it's to me, in my just common talk, I just call that like a leaf compost. You're just fucking letting leaves sit in a fucking bucket or on top of a pile and just letting them mold. You're not introducing any greens or anything to try to get a thermophilic thing going. It's not. It's just fucking leaves sitting there statically decomposing in like a leaf compost. That's what
I mean. It's definitely
cannabis leaves.
It's definitely true that like some microbes can have like a dual lifestyle where they can live on a plant, in a plant, or around a plant, and then when the plant dies, they'll start to like decompose its body, whether they're inside on it or around it. But at the same time, like I think you're mostly worried about like things that are usually obligate pathogens like powdery mildew and that kind of a thing. But like there are some microbes like botrytis that can like attack the organism both sort of biotrophically by like interacting with its physiology and like taking resources, or necrotrophically and just like killing the tissue and then just eating it, kind of in that process, sort of destructively.
Botrytis does tend to just eat the tissue to death. If it isn't stopped and the environment is right, it will just eat its host to death.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's part of the host's reproduction, in my opinion. If a host is seeded and dense and moisture is building up inside of it, it uses this botrytis to fall to the ground and seed the earth.
Well, yeah, and botrytis Botrytis is kind of special in that it's got a lot of cool little traits that I always like to talk about. Like it can be asymptomatic in plants until they start to flower. It's often associated with the reproductive tissue. It likes to sort of appear, and it does really well against like what's the term? It's not dead tissue, inert tissue, like kind of like flower petals and that kind of a thing. Like non-vascular tissue like that. So, and botrytis can also be passed through seed in some cases with some plants. So, there's a lot of cool things about that. But there are other endophytes that might have this effect as well. And we're just like kind of scratching the top of the iceberg there.
In reality, I think going back to the whole top dress being too dry, wood chip mulch might be my best bet because it'd be maybe heavy enough that it wouldn't get blown around like a hay or a straw.
I would avoid wood chip mulch because wood chip, it takes fungal to break down wood chips because it's got all that lignin content in wood chips. And so for that fungus to start working and breaking those down, it's going to have to use nitrogen. So it's going to be a nitrogen sink for you if you're going to use wood chips. So I always would recommend to fully compost wood chips before you add them to the pot.
And it's as easy as adding a nitrogen source in a pile with the wood chips and allowing it to like actually soak in the that nitrogen. It looks like Brandon just bounced. Later, Brandon.
Peace out, Brandon. I think he can be found at Rust Brandon, no more dot. This is the second page. Also majestic_craft_cannabis on Instagram. That's the commercial facility that he is the lead grower, cultivation expert at over there. He grows some fire shit. Seen some great test results and great looking buds. A lot of happy plants in his garden. Shout out to Brandon. Thank you for joining us and sharing your time.
And back to what Aaron was just recommending was with the nitrogen. Yeah, you can do that. And it reminds me, shout out to Green. Some people may have known him from, he's on the Frugal Forest or with the Michigan Rose Grow Show, but he's also on Eagle Gardens channel. Anyhow, he made like a sip system, organic, and then he had a layer of sawdust, which when I say sawdust, it's not sawdust. It's more like when you whittle and you get those curled pieces of wood, there's a bunch of that.
Shavings.
There you go, shavings. So that there's a layer of that at the bottom. He was looking, I don't know if it was aeration or what, but there's a layer of that. And then his soil and all this, well, he got yellowing leaves early on and didn't realize until he figured it out that it was that wood. It basically sucked all the nitrogen out of his soil that he had in there to process that wood that was in the soil. So what he did was he had a sip container, right? So it's sub-irrigated. So he just added a bunch of fish fertilizer into his feed with his water, and that supplied the nitrogen it needed in an organic way. And the plant greened back up and everything was cool. So yeah, you could just and then if you wanted to be like fully like you don't even want to source fish fertilizer, I mean you could take grass clippings, fresh grass clippings that are still green and use that for a nitrogen source. I mean, there's a lot of things you can get for free that would do the same job.
So with the whole wood being a nitrogen, like, I guess like robber, or like it's going to sap it from the soil or whatever and cause issues, I wonder how or why those, like hugelkultur, I've heard it pronounced, they have like logs at the bottom of their beds. So wouldn't that be a similar concept, or is it the slower breakdown because it's a full log itself? And
I've heard it happening to hugels too, yeah.
Yeah, that's the big downside of a hugel, but you can address that. You could add nitrogen back in its top dresses, things like that. But the advantage of the hugel is the moisture. So what's really a huge advantage of that is as this woody material, it really also acts kind of like a sponge and it holds water. So in situations where you have a raised bed and you don't want to have to be out there watering your plants, I did it this year and I only had to water a couple times this summer in my vegetable beds. So it was amazing. It's awesome.
Totally.
My understanding is, sorry, Matt, real quick. My understanding is hugels are like for 5 years in the future. Like you really don't.
Yeah. I agree with that, Aaron. I love hugelkultur. I like a lot of its advantages, and that's one of the big ones. Speaking of being from the West Coast and specifically San Diego, where it's very hot a lot of the time, it's pretty cool that you can use it that way. When I would propagate shiitake mushrooms and linger or reishi mushrooms, and and oyster mushrooms, I would use hardwood, and I would soak the wood first because you want to get all of that liquid into the log and into the mycelium. And so, yeah, it definitely works.
Sungrown
So-
707 says you're supposed to find a log that's old and rotten with lots of fungal growth already on it for the hugels.
Okay, so that's cool because I was just going to get into that. So what I did to speed up that 5-year thing was, for one, I didn't use a tree. Okay, I used, for one, all of the saved branches I had from my indoor grow from probably about a year or 2 years. So I just broke them down to branches. So I broke them down to smaller pieces. That speeds up that decomposition. And then I have these big oak trees in my front yard, and they're diseased or something. We did have before I even bought the house, and I've been here for a long ass time, there was an oil spill, I guess. And so a lot of the older growth trees and stuff got damaged from that. And so I think that's got something to do with this. These trees are like on their way out. So every year they're dropping these branches that you can see the mushroom blooms on it. So I saved those, and I threw those in there too on the bottom when I built my beds. And so it's got a mix of, I know fungi already started to break down, that process has already began. And then all my cannabis stuff that, I feed with microbes. So I know I'm sure there's microbes present there to help break that down too. And then I just, with my fucking broken used balls and group balls and shit. So I just reused everything I already had. And then my clippings on top, and I was ready to go.
When I grew Stropharia mushrooms, in part of like a mushroom garden patch with like some vegetables in a raised bed, I used wood chips, and this like Stropharia, like for those who haven't ever grown it, it's like so vigorous. I love it because you'll make these thick mats, lots of water though. You do have to use kind of a lot of water, but that's what I like about the hugelkultur thing, or using the like hardwood and like soaking it. But yeah, like I think that's a really great way to do it. It's kind of like the same way that you masticate and like break things down with your physical like molars and teeth to like make food particles, is the same kind of thing that you're doing if you like kind of process the log already, in a manner of speaking, right?
I definitely think so. And Sungrown 707 said to Spartan's comment in the hugelkultur thing, the log is basically the best form of IMO, or indigenous microorganism you can get, at least in his opinion. And I think that there's maybe some validity to that claim. Like if it's growing naturally in your area already and it's breaking down that tree and breaking down that wood, it's presumably going to continue to break down that wood while it's in your bed, and hopefully spread some of that good stuff that's going to live and work locally for you.
I was just going to say,
I'm not totally against using microbes, right? There you go.
What'd you have to say?
I was just going to say about like when you start using biochar, you got to charge that with nutrients too, just like a hugel. But like Aaron was saying, I know someone, he started a hugel and he used it the first year and it worked fine for him. But he said even just the second year, the stuff just blew up like he never saw before. And he kind of totally embraced like permaculture kind of. He just has all sorts of plants growing in between his pot plants, and it's amazing to watch it happen. It really is.
Think about planting into a hot compost pile. First time you do it, it's not gonna go so well. Second time, it's gonna go really rad because that's just straight compost. So something to think about. Hugel is like this fancy, very complex and dynamic compost.
Yeah, I buy that description.
That's my opinion, though. That's not real.
I mean, but it's a good opinion. I guess that's what I'm saying.
That's what the people are here for. It's growing with my fellow growers. They want to hear our opinions, right? Everyone's got a different one, and we have some reason behind it, I would imagine. So the people here, they have their opinions in the chat. They're all sharing them. It's a back and forth engagement. I think that's what it's all about. We're all moving forward together because that opinion, like you probably put a lot of time and thought into it, and there's a reason behind it, but other people might have different thoughts and beliefs. So it's cool to share and kind of expand all of our knowledges together.
It does make me, so if I may like wax poetic a little bit, I do feel like it's a good feeling. It's a fulfilling feeling for me to grow like vegetables and that sort of a thing with like a hugo culture that I've like inoculated with like some fungus that I like the garden giant King Stropharia was talking about, or oyster mushrooms. Get like another flush of a food going in there. I loved and did a lot of research on food forests growing up, and I was very fascinated with the concept and still am in agroecology. And I just think it's really cool when people are able to do that on a macro scale and on a micro scale.
I totally agree. Anybody who grows their own food or cannabis, growing anything, it has a tremendous sense of accomplishment, especially if you do like research into these types of methods, and you can have success with what it sounds like what you were doing was pretty incredible with the mushrooms and the hugo culture. But I wanted to give Spartan Grown a chance to get out of here. I know he's got some dogs and he's got another show coming up in 15 minutes, so he might have to hit the bathroom, get some water, refill that tray. Spartan Grown, do you want any final thoughts and shout outs?
Shout out to you, Jack. You do such a fucking great job every time, and I don't shout you out enough. So you get the first shout out, buddy. And you know, thank you for everything you do. There's a lot behind the scenes that a lot of people don't, you know, get to really see, and I know it's a pain in the ass. So I appreciate you, dude. Shout out to Chad. You guys, man, Chad's starting to get hard for me to keep up with, man. It's starting to get to be. I think I saw over 100 in there at least. So
definitely up to 125.
Okay, nice. Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. I love to see that growing. Puts a big smile on my face. And I don't want to forget anybody on the panel, so I'm just gonna say everyone on the panel, but especially Aaron, dude. I've been missing you, bro. Awesome for you to come back. You know, hopefully you'll make it more and more. So
thanks for the love, Spartan. Appreciate you.
No problem, man. And growers loved everybody. And yeah, you can come check me out in about 20 minutes or so, and I'll be on the Mission Bros Grow Show. But I got to pee so bad. I got to get the fuck out of here.
Peace out, Spartan.
Peace and love, Spartan. Thanks for coming, man.
Take it easy, man.
That is at Spartan Grown on Instagram. You can find at Mitten Canico, where he works at his commercial facility over there in Michigan. They're absolutely killing it with the Han Solo burger. I hyped up that Donnie burger, and like 24 of you listeners have sent me packs. Like, I bought the Donnie burger, and I think you're going to find some fire in those packs. So shout out to Skunk House Genetics for breeding those. And again, Spartan Grown for coming and sharing his time. I know he's very generous with it, coming on lots of different shows, but we definitely appreciate him here, and I appreciate the kind words he had for me as my being the host. But I wanted to pass it over to maybe Noah the Grower. You've been quiet. What are you thinking about over there, bud? Do you ever use any compost or things like that, or any?
Yeah, I do. I just have like a dirt base that I use, and then like I kind of like, you know, just kind of build stuff up myself a little bit with, you know, kelp, bat guano, a couple different things that I have, just, you know, different supplements. And then I can't remember who said it. I think it was Spartan actually. That, you know, it's funny. Certain plants, you know, they'll need a little bit more nitrogen, and so I'll kind of give that plant that, you know, strain a little bit different, you know, combination, and you kind of get to know it a little bit more. And the more you grow it, you know, with me, you know, where I grow from clone. But I'm excited to get some seeds from a couple people here, and I'm going to be doing a pheno hunt here in a month or two once my ankle heals up. I got a little 4x4 tent. I'm going to get a little LED light, and I'm going to go out there and, you know, experiment and learn some new stuff. I'm lucky enough to have Archive Seed Bank right over there, right over the border, and they got some different stuff over there that I'm definitely interested in. You know, all the strains I've gotten from them have been fire. So yeah, no, there's a lot of cool stuff that I'm excited to do this later this winter. So yeah.
You unintentionally answered a question from the chat like an hour ago. Robbo, he asked, can you use kelp in a salt-based nutrient system? And Noah is one of those people that is able to make that happen successfully. And if you look at his system, he does a great job with it. I don't know, Dr. MJ, do you use any kelp in your system? I know that you have a ton of success and maybe don't use it. So
yeah, no, I don't use it, but I don't have a specific problem with it. You know, kelp does some interesting things to the plant, but I haven't found any particular need for those things in my grow. So yeah, some growers use it. I think it's fine. I remember that question. He was asking, like, is it going to get killed or something? There's nothing really alive in the kelp by the time you're adding it to your nutrient solution at that point anyway. So there's no interactions that I think you need to really be aware of there. Obviously concerns about like EC and pH.
people are looking for the bioaccumulation effect. Basically, from my understanding, it's a lot of micronutrients in the kelp, and then there's also some potentially plant growth regulation that happens with some of the.
Yeah, it's the PGR stuff that I was sort of referencing.
You guys
it affects the way
remember
the plants grow.
I sent those pictures to the group. Do you remember that? I had some problems with the Bubba Kush I was growing. It's Cotton Kitty Bubba. And I was kind of we kind of attributed it to the kelp, but like getting this like weird growth growing off of the middle of the meristem, not like off of the leaf or where the normal shoot would be, but like in the middle of the or petiole rather, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I've seen
Was
that
it
with
like
some
a
genetic.
nub or was it an actual growth tip?
Like
or...
full on nugs, man. And it would be like two of them if it was long enough.
Yeah. So it's a budding site. So I do believe that that's from the some aspect of the PGR and the kelp.
Yeah, I'd say just like everything else, in moderation. Like, don't go crazy with it. You guys, can I give myself a shameless plug on something I've been working on really
Go for it.
recently?
Yes, of course.
Something
That's what we're here for.
I've been excited about. This is going to be on the website. I've created a product. It's really simple. And it's a fucking clone shipper, but I'm not part of clone shipper. This is going to be called Plant Packer. So this is my official fucking, you can't steal this idea because I am live online right now with this shit. So I invented it, motherfuckers. I'll take you to court. Now, this thing's dope because it gives you a lot of room. Patent pending. Exactly. This gives you a lot of room down here for whatever medium you like to use. These are all removable. This will protect your plant from the light, from falling out, hitting your plant. So if these like unstick and like hit or if you got a tall plant, you can just let it grow right up into the light. But like, I don't condone shipping cannabis plants anywhere illegal, but this is going to be a product that you could ship to your buddies within state.
Well, pepper plants.
I've been hearing that the hemp farm bill says anything under 0.3% THC allows stuff to be shippable, but then I've also heard that the Department of Ag has confiscated some clones and will like actually grow them out to see if they produce higher than 0.3% THC. But I can't verify those claims. But I can verify people have had clones taken in shipments. So if you're going to ship them, do it more discreetly, even if it's within state. I think sometimes stuff just gets nabbed because they think it looks inappropriate, even if it might be legal. Which
so
I don't know
maybe
if it
a
is
thicker envelope so they can't see the glowing light from the.
You have to. Okay. I have a solution.
Box within a box.
It has a white inside and it blocks the light. Get good wrapping paper, get thick wrapping paper. And the white reflects the light back onto the plant. And the wrapping paper makes it look like a gift. And I do not condone doing anything illegal.
They make Mylar, and Mylar is like reflective it's really cheap. And they have it like a vacuum seal packages that are Mylar. So you can actually vacuum seal the entire thing within it and it blocks the light. So if they try and scan, like you can go box within a box. I believe that it's legal. Personally, I would go to court. I'd have my lawyers fight them and say it's 0.3% THC when I ship it. I have lawyers here in California that I'd be happy to fight the case. But I don't want to have to.
Money.
They do cost money.
I probably wouldn't ship it from like my return address anyways. And whoever's getting it is always at plausible deniability.
There you go.
Yep.
Thank you for allowing me that time, guys. I appreciate you as always.
Happy to share. And whenever you have do you have a website officially up?
No, but it'll be atgacres.com and probably like within a few days, maybe a week, I'll drop it. I got merch, like I got shirts and I got these plant packers. I got some stickers. I just want to start being a business person. Like I've just been growing weed for so long that I got to start this business thing to keep up with the market. So here we go.
Hey, it's nice to get into some other business that's related to what you love. Noah the Grow, you got your hand up over there. What's up?
Yeah, I was just going to comment about what I was saying earlier. Yeah, so I've done bro science kind of stuff and done it without my little concoction of a little bit of sea kelp, very low dose, a little bit of like fish emulsion stuff, a little bit of that going on. I have a little recipe that I use, and without it don't taste, it don't have the terp content. So I firmly believe that the microbes and stuff that I build, this stuff actively feeds it in, my system, which is an organic based, salt based, but salt has some salt, but organic based. And, I believe my work, speaks for itself. I've always said that, don't judge me on what I say, just judge me on the pot that I have. And it's been working okay for me. So, and everybody, like I always say, everybody can do their own thing in their own grow. Dr. Coco, he's doing, cocoa, and I wouldn't know the first thing about that. I've never done it. So, obviously, I wouldn't be my forte. Growing in dirt, I've been doing it for quite a while, and I've done side by side stuff. So, I just go with what I've seen and what works. And
My experience
that's how
with
I've always done it.
even using synthetic nutrients in cocoa or in dirt is when I added the organic stuff like you're mentioning. I personally liked the flavor a little more. I can't scientifically say that I had more flavor or anything, but I liked the flavor, and so did my people around me that tried it. So I definitely think there might be something to it, but it might not be a necessity in every situation. So I'm glad that you share some of your tricks and tips, because you've been doing it for a long time and do it well. I can't wait to try some of your herb, but we're up at that 5:55 point, and there's enough of us on the panel by the time we go around. I think we'll come to that 6 o'clock hour here on the West Coast. So Noah the Grower, I'll pass it to you first to give your final sign out and shout outs.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Noah the Grower from Instagram. Noah with 2 E's, and anybody who has any questions or wants to follow me, you're more than welcome. I have a lot of fun. I've been doing this medically for quite a while, and I have a blast. I love interacting with people, and I always have a good time on the show as always. And I'll see you guys all next week. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. I always appreciate it. No matter what time you show up, you don't have got to be here right on time, and that goes to anyone on the panel. If you feel like, I'm going to be late, I might not show up at all. Show up for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. It doesn't matter. Any amount of time. We're always happy to see all of your faces and hear your voices and get some of that feedback. So next up, we got the American one.
Oh, you caught me off guard, Jack. Dude, you do an excellent job. Thanks for taking the reins, and shout out to Shane. Shout out to everyone in chat. Coco for Cannabis. I think you got me on this one. This New Year's Eve grow, the one header. I think I'm going to join up. I think it's my time. Dude, I read an article way back. I think it was in Vietnam. These guys were in Vietnam, and they saw this farmer, and that's what he did. He chopped off all the lower branches, just had one massive chunk at the top, and that's what he did, like out in the field, sun-grown. So yeah, without taking up the rest of the time, shout out to you, shout out to everyone in the panel, and yeah, this was great. Thanks for hosting again, Jack, and peace out, everyone.
Peace out, Tao. Happy to have you, and always happy to be the host. I enjoyed the position very much. It has been a fun time doing it. Next up, we got Aaron the Grower. I'm going kind of reverse order. I went from top to bottom on the Zoom, on the intros. Now I'm going from the bottom up to the top.
Okay. I'm Aaron the Grower. In case you're watching this in the future, you can find me at ATG Acres or on Instagram or atgacres.com. Currently, I am not on social media, so you can't find me. Period.
I think that's part of the way that you like it, and I think that you set up your life in that way, so you should have the luxury to be a little bit off-grid and be unreachable by the people if you want to be. So shout out to you. Appreciate you, and whenever you do get back on the social medias, let us know, and we'll all be there to support you in that endeavor.
I did just drop my email in the chat.
Hit them up, chat.
That's my personal email, fam.
Definitely don't do anything bad with that email.
Oh, I'll have to change it now. God damn it.
All right. Next up, we have Dr. MJ.
Hey guys, yeah, not just Tao, everybody else can sign up for the New Year's Grow Challenge too. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I really am excited to see the one cola plants. I think those will be some of the most exciting sort of pictures and get everybody talking about things. So head over to cocoforcannabis.com/challenge, sign up for the New Year's Grow Challenge. And the other thing, I want to say is if you are eligible and have not already done so, go vote. And with that, I will just sign it off. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, panel. Thanks, chat.
I totally agree with that last part. It doesn't matter, in my opinion, who you vote for. If you vote, I think that's important. It's part of our democracy. And in my government class, the teacher said if you don't vote, you're an idiot, technically, because the term idiot was originally created to describe people who didn't vote. You can look it up. At least that when I looked it up, I found that to be the history. So
there you go. Don't be an idiot.
Unintelligent. But yeah, vote. Use your right. And some people don't have the right to vote. Maybe they went to prison for cannabis and they can't do it because they're a felon now.
Don't forget you have the right to not vote. You have that right.
That's true. And you could vote for Mickey Mouse. I mean, if you don't like either
What
of
a
the fucking
wonderful
candidates.
country.
But vote for like local stuff that matters, I think, more importantly than some of the big elections sometimes. With that said, sorry to get political, but Matthew Gates, final person before myself, and then we'll close down.
Yeah, good job, Jack. I guess I'll echo the same sentiment everyone else has had about that. It's been really cool to grow with everyone here. Seeing the level of entrepreneurship around this group makes me very motivated. I also have some cool things in the works that I can't talk about yet quite, but I am very curious to see how they go, and I will tell you about them when they manifest. My name is Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I have been for the last 10 years, working with cannabis for most of that time. If you want information about pests and pathogens and plant physiology and that kind of stuff, you can find me on YouTube channel Zenthanol, the same one I was using in chat, and also on Instagram and Twitter as @SyncAngel.
Thank you so much for joining us. I definitely love all your content, specifically the YouTube. For me, that's a just giant treasure trove of IPM content, and it's like long form, great detail, great information. All of it is, but that's like I think the real golden nugget for the people out there. With no further ado, I'm at Jack Greenstock. My green screen's bugging out a little bit. Signing out. Have a good one. Go over, check out the Michigan Bros Grow Show. They're starting now, so check them out. Michigan Bros Grow Show. Have a good one, everybody. See you next week.
Grower love, everyone.
Happy growing.